Michael, Councillor Chalmers. Do we have Councillor Cooper? No. We also have present Councillor Cowan, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Donnelly. I have apologies from Councillor Fagan. We have present Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Ferguson Miller, Councillor Handybode. Do we have Councillor Horn? No. We also have present Councillor Hose, Councillor Loudon, Councillor Hugh MacDonald, Councillor McClymont, Councillor Leslie MacDonald, Councillor McDougall. Do we have Councillor McGeever? No. We also have present Councillor Nelson. I have apologies from Councillor Razak, and we have Councillor Gowland substituting. We also have present Councillor Ross, Councillor Scott and Councillor Williams, and there are also a number of officers present today. I'll hand back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. No declarations of interest, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 22nd of May, that's pages 5 to 14. In your pack, can I ask that we can approve this as a correct record?
Approved.
Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the appeals panel held on the 30th of May, pages 15 to 16. Can this be approved as a correct record?
Approved.
And minutes of the recruitment committee held on the 4th and 21st of June, pages 17 to 20. Can we approve these as a correct record, please?
Approved.
Thank you. Moving on to pages 21 to 30, revenue budget monitoring. Lorraine, can I invite you, please, to speak to this report?
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This is the first of 4 monitoring reports for the resource that covers revenue and capital, and it covers the old financial year and the new year. So item 5 then on page 21 is the old year revenue report and takes us to the end of the financial year, 31st of March 2024. Section 5 details the financial implications and notes the year-end positions an overspend of £165,000, and the details of that are in Appendix A. The outturn position is a favourable movement of £51,000 from the position that we had anticipated as part of our probable outturn exercise. So that's a good news story in terms of the end of the year position. And the variants are proposed to realign budgets, just tidying up the budgets at the year-end period to reflect what we were working on as we move towards the end of the financial year. And those are in Appendices B to H as appropriate. So I'll be looking to ask committee to note the final outturn position of £165,000 of an overspend, and that the budget variants are approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lorraine. Do we have any questions? No questions. Can we approve the report, please?
I'll second the report.
Thank you. Budget monitoring, 24-25, pages 131 and 42. Lorraine, please.
Thank you. So this is the second revenue report, and this covers the new financial year and starts on page 31. So in terms of the background, we're just noting there this will provide the position for finance and corporate resources for the new year. And Appendix A of your papers notes a new service analysis statement outlining the key highlights per service for the resource. And Appendix B provides the detailed financial position for the resource as a whole, with variance explanation by budget category. We then go on to look at the detailed individual service appendices in Appendices C to I. So it's just a wee bit of a change in terms of what we're giving you. We're giving you more information in terms of our service analysis statement there. We're also noting that with the move to the new Fusion system, we are focusing now on the expected outturn or a forecast for the year on our expenditure and income lines. And as I say, it's a new approach, and it allows early monitoring and early information in terms of the outturn for both employee and non-employee budgets. Section 5 then again provides the detailed financial information, and it notes again in section 5.1 we've got the key projected outturn variances by service in Appendix A. The resources projected outturn position is noted in Appendix B, and that's a break-even position at this early point in the year. And then the variants to realign budgets across the individual services are detailed in Appendices C to I. And if I can ask committee to go back to section 2, please, and to approve the following recommendations. that the projected break-even position for the resource for the current financial year be noted, and that the proposed budget variance be approved. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Councillor McDougall, please.
Lorraine, it's good to see the new format of the reports coming through now from Oracle Fusion, and the kind of benefits we were expecting to see there are going to start coming through. My question is in relation to one of the footnotes, actually one of the variance explanations on page 41. It's footnote 1. And it states that the overspend to the other bodies category relates to medical charges, and that the service provision of medical referrals is being considered by management in the context of budget availability. So my question is really what that means. You know, for example, if it's deemed that the budget isn't adequate, would that be increased in future? So looking just for a wee bit more information on that sentence, please.
Lorraine, please.
Thank you very much for your question. This is really about looking at what we're spending our money on. So this is a good example probably of how the fusion system is working, because based on what we're experiencing at the moment, we're forecasting an overspend on that line. So what we'll be looking to do, working with Michelle and her personnel team, is just to establish the criteria that we're using in terms of making these medical referrals, because that's what this is about. It's not about taking the service away, it's about looking to see whether there are any other cheaper alternatives, whether we can do things differently and it'll cost less, and also about looking to see whether we've been consistent across the different services of the resources and across the council to make sure we're doing the same thing. And if we have to spend a bit more money, then that's fair enough, but this is prompting us to actually look into that in a bit more detail.
Okay.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we approve the report?
I'll second the report.
Thank you. Moving on to capital budget monitoring 23-24. That's pages 43 to 46. Back to you, Lorraine, please.
Thank you. So agenda item 7 then starts on page 43, and again we're going back the way, this time for capital. So this is the old year report for the capital programme for the resource. Section 3 notes the budget for the year was 5.333 million, and there's been no change to that budget since we last reported to committee back in May. Section 5.1 then notes that against that budget of 5.33 million, we incurred spend of 4.649 million. So we had an underspend of £684,000 in comparison to our overall programme. Section 5.2 notes that the underspend is reflecting the level of capital spend achieved on IT infrastructure projects in that last financial year, and that's mainly due to in-house staff costs for the Oracle Fusion project being managed by the revenue budget rather than through the capital programme, and that's really about making sure the spend's sitting in the right place. Funding for the projects that will continue into the new financial year will be carried into the new year, and I'll pick that up in the next report. So I'll be looking to ask committee to note the recommendations in section 2, that the capital programme of 5.333 million and expenditure for the year of 4.649 million be noted. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Can we agree the report, please?
I'll second the report.
Thank you. No other questions. Capital budget monitoring 24-25, pages 47 to 50. Back to you again, Lorraine, please.
Thank you. So this final monitoring report from the financial perspective details in the background there in section 3.2, we have a budget for the year of 3.086 million for our resource. Section 5.1 again notes that budget of 3.086, and that was based on the original budget that we had approved back in February, updated for the carry forward of the underspend that we had from last financial year. Section 5.2 notes that again we're moving towards a forecast arrangement for our capital programme, again following the introduction of the new Fusion IT system, and we'll routinely compare that forecast to our annual budget, which means again that we can take corrective action if we need to in terms of any overspends or slippage, and we can do things to try and make sure that we maximise our spend in year. So maybe bring forward some other projects that have been approved into the current year, just to try and make sure that we're spending our money when we've got it. So Appendix A shows you the forecast for the current financial year of 3.086 million. So we're looking to fully spend our budget as it stands at the moment. And for your information, the actual spend to the 14th of June is 815,000. So again, I'd be looking to refer committee back to the recommendations in section 2 and just ask that the capital programme for the year of 3.086 and the forecast expenditure of the 3.086 be noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? No. Can we move the report, please?
I'll second the report.
Thank you. Agenda item 9, Finance and Corporate Resources, Workforce Monitoring, April to June 2024, pages 51 to 60. Can I ask Elaine Maxwell, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Members will be familiar with this standard workforce monitoring report, which is prepared by Personnel Services for the to provide committee with an update on the employment information for the period April to June 2024 for Finance and Corporate Resources. Section 4.1 outlines the maximising attendance details for the resource, and you'll see that the absence figure for June of this year was 3.2%, and that remained unchanged when we compare ourselves to the previous month. But you will see that it's 2% lower than the council-wide figure. Looking back to June of last year, we can see that the absence figure for the resource has decreased by 1%. As always, we do our projections and looking at the annual trends. The absence average for the resource is projected for 24-25 to be 3.3%, comparing to a council-wide average projection of 5.5%. Section 4.2 outlines the occupational health information, which can be found in Appendix 2, and you'll see that there were 67 employees attended for appointments or been treated for support in that period, showing an increase of 8 when compared to the same period last year. I suppose important to note with the new provider, what we are seeing is that our occupational health referrals, particularly in terms of our medical examinations, turnaround is quicker, and these are being completed within a 10-day period turnaround for now. Section 4.3 outlines the accidents and incidents, and you can see that there had been none reported for the resource in this period. And moving on to section 4.4 in terms of employee relations activity, we can see that it's noted that there was one disciplinary hearing, no grievances, no dignity at work, and there are no appeal hearings pending. Section 4.5 outlines the analysis of leavers, and you can see that there were 6 leavers eligible for an exit interview. And that 3 exit interviews were carried out, and that figure remains unchanged compared to the same period last year. Moving on to section 4.7 outlines the breakdown of vacant posts, and that you'll see that there were 20 posts, 20 employees left employment, and managers indicated that 18 posts were being replaced. 1 post was due to end because of a fixed term contract, and 1 post was being held pending a savings review. The staffing watch information at section 5 shows that there's been a decrease of 44 employees in post from March to June of 2024. And with that, I would refer committee back to section 2 of the report and ask you to approve the recommendation to note the employment information for the resource for the period April to June 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions regarding this report? Can I just say I'm absolutely delighted about the discipline, grievance and dignity at work. That we've got nobody, and that is absolutely tremendous, terrific work. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10. Oh, sorry. Can I move this report?
I will second the report.
Council-wide workforce monitoring, April to June 2024. That's pages 61 to 82. And back to you, Elaine, please.
Thank you, Chair. And similar to the previous report, but this time for the council-wide information. So outlining the key details, again, you will all be familiar with this. So section 4.1 outlines the absence details for the council, and you'll see that the average council figure for the period is 5.2%, which is representing a decrease of 0.1% from the previous month. Although, again, when we're looking at ourselves, as we always do, to the same month of the previous year, we can see there's a slight increase of 0.5%. Basing on the annual trends in the absence rate to June, we can see for the financial year, the projection is 5.5%, as I noted in the previous report. Further breakdowns and comparisons to previous years identify some information as follows. So we can see that the APT&C figure for the period is 5.3%, representing an increase of 0.4%. The teaching figure has increased by 0.6% to 2.8%, with the manual worker figure increasing by 0.7% to 7.2%. Again, members will be familiar through other papers that musculoskeletal and psychological conditions remain the main reason for absence across the council. And that's broken down in terms of the following. So psychological, although we're saying it's one of the main reasons, we can see that there has been a decrease by 308 days. Musculoskeletal has decreased by 503 days. Respiratory conditions have increased by 559 days, and stomach, bowel, blood and metabolic disorders have increased by 381 days. Again, it's important to note that our managers work very closely in terms of following our maximising attendance procedures, and there's quite careful consideration and close working with our personnel colleagues to make sure that we're undertaking case management reviews where appropriate. So we are, and I understand, obviously, you will be familiar with the supports that have been put in place in terms of the recent exec committee paper, in terms of employee wellbeing and the steps that we've taken. I think just a point to note in terms of some of our long-term absence figures, and we can see that pattern there, but it's important probably just to note that actually as at the point in time just now, we are considering there are 38 ill health retirement cases being considered across the council at this point in time. And we've actually concluded 51 cases, so we can see that there's quite a number of employees are being referred through that long-term process in terms of considering for ill health retirement. Moving on again to section 5, in terms of the detail of the occupational health referrals, you'll see there were 470 employees referred for a medical examination and an increase of 143 from the previous year. 552 employees attended physiotherapy, again showing an increase. But again, important to note, of those 552 employees that were referred, 76% of those remained at work whilst they were undertaking treatment. There were 445 employees referred to the Employee Support Officer, which is showing an increase of 30, with 85% of those referrals being related to personal reasons. There were 166 referrals to PAM Assist, again an increase of 8, with personal reasons being accounted for 84% of the referrals. 8% were related to work-related reasons and 8% for other reasons. And we had 4 employees who were referred for CBT, which is a decrease of 3 compared to the same period last year. But again, members will be familiar in terms of the CBT process. There is criteria for that, and PAM Assist will certainly identify where those cases are suitable for CBT. Paragraph 6, section 6, outlines the accidents and incidents within the council, and we can see there were 365 recorded within this period, which has shown a decrease of 3. There was 1 specific injury recorded, and that figure remains unchanged from the same period last year. And just to note that the specific injury was in relation to someone who had fallen downstairs and it resulted in a broken foot. There were 355 minor accidents and incidents recorded during this period, with 4 accidents resulting in an absence of 3 or more days. There were 5 accidents resulting in an absence of over 7 days. And again, just to point out that you will be familiar that there is a joint working group that look at accidents and incidents, and particularly being a focus within education resources. And we do a focus locally and nationally in terms of making sure that all accidents and incidents are being reported. And we provide ongoing reminders to managers in that process. Section 7 outlines employee relations activity, and you'll see that there were 39 disciplinary hearings held across the council, and action was taken in 31 of those cases with no appeals raised on the outcome. We do try and convene our disciplinary hearings within 6 weeks of the fact-finding process being concluded, and 87% of those hearings met that target. 3 appeal hearings were heard, 1 was not upheld and 2 were upheld. And at this point, at the time of the report being written, there was no grievances, no dignity at works, and 3 cases were being referred for mediation. Section 8 outlines the leavers and exit interviews, and you'll see across the council there were 140 leavers eligible for an exit interview. Looking at the number of employees in post at the time against that number, made the labour turnover figure for the council of 0.9%. Again, with an annual projected labour turnover, looking at the financial year, is coming in at 3.7%. Section 8.2 notes of the 140 leavers that were eligible for an ex-interview, all were offered ex-interviews, and they are all signposted to the online section, as well as other routes that we try and encourage people to uptake on that and participate in it. And you'll see that there were 43 ex-interviews conducted. So it's down one in comparison to the previous year. Moving on to section 8.4, show that there were 353 leavers and with the relevant FTE, and of that 308 posts were being replaced, 3 posts being filled on a temporary basis, 59 posts being due to end in a fixed term contract, 20 posts ending due to fixed term contracts, and 13 posts being left vacant pending service review, 8 posts planned to be removed for savings, and 1 post planned to transfer budget to another post. Section 9 outlines the recruitment monitoring information. Again, you'll see that there's a lot of detail within there, and I'm not going to outline all of it, but key points is in terms of 115 applicants that declared themselves as disabled, 47 were shortlisted and 5 were appointed. The 369 applicants that declared themselves black and ethnic minority background, 65 were shortlisted and 12 were appointed. And of the 12 applicants who declared themselves as veterans, 5 were shortlisted. There was none appointed. Again, looking at section 10 of the report, notes the staffing watch information, and we can see that there's been an increase of 64 employees in post between March and June of this year. And that's outlined in Appendix 15 of the report. So with that, I would refer committee back to section 2 of the report and ask you to approve the recommendation to note the employment information for the council for the period for April to June 2024. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Councillor Grant Ferguson, please.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment, I suppose, question as well. It's just with regards to the part. Now, while I'm aware that the current job application captures candidates with disabilities, does it capture candidates with challenges, for example, such as autism or maybe dyslexia? Because I'm aware that these can affect the completion of applications and how they may present at interview.
Elaine, please.
Thank you. Yes, actually, at one of our, I think it's EcoOps forums, this was just talked about at quite some length, and our application process does capture that information in terms of what supports an individual may need in terms of either their application process and in terms of if they are shortlisted for interview. So as an example, we have had individuals that have declared that they have autism and have required additional time to have their interview, or we provide their questions in advance. And for some individuals, we make sure that their interview is scheduled at the end so that there is more time for their interview. So there are quite a number of steps that we can put in place, and that is captured within the application process. So hopefully that answers your question.
Is that suitable, Councillor Ferguson?
No, that sounds fantastic. I just wondered if it was possible to get to if the data monitoring would actually capture the figures to see the actual numbers, because I think the way that it works just now, we don't actually see the numbers, and it's all kind of into one big number, I think. So it would be good to see how many people, numbers wise, of people who are applying for positions. Because obviously you have people who are autistic or neurodivergent who think it may be difficult to apply for a job, but I think it's something that maybe could be split out. I don't know if it's possible.
I'll check that information. I'm not sure it is possible. As I said, I know it's something we have. So Ramon Hutchinson within Arch has certainly did updates, and I've worked closely with him, and he was satisfied with the processes we had in place, particularly for those neurodivergent. And we actually within personnel have done quite a number of sessions with our managers on the same issue. But I will have a look at our information to see what we can provide for you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Leslie.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. Excuse me, and good afternoon, everyone. My question's a quick one on page 74, where we have the tables with the breakdowns of referrals to services. It looks like there's been a big jump in teachers being referred to physiotherapy between April and June last year compared to April and June this year. It's gone from 63 to 109. I know that there's obviously going to be a considerable amount of variance in these figures, but that seems to be quite a significant figure there. I wondered if this is something we can be provided with some more information about, and would it automatically be sort of flags for a review where there's a big bump? It does seem to stand out from the other figures that we've got there, including the figures for all education staff and not just teachers.
Elaine, please.
Yeah, certainly we, discuss our figures in terms of our referrals on a regular basis. Naturally, this morning I was in attendance at the Maximising Attendance Working Group, which is held jointly between ourselves and members of our trade union, and the teachers' trade unions are reflected in that. I think I would take back to, obviously, in terms of that increase across the piece of people that have been attending physiotherapy, vast majority are still at work, so they're not presenting as being unfit for work. So we try and have a look, at the details that are coming through, and if there are any areas of concern, we would raise that. So I'm not aware of anything in particular, Councillor Loudon, but I ask the team to have another look to see if there's anything that would give us any cause for concern. But I've not been flagged of anything, and it's certainly not been raised by any of our trade union colleagues in that area at this moment in time. Thank you.
Councillor Loudon, you satisfied with that answer? Shall we? Right. Oh, sorry. Councillor Loudon.
Hi, yep, sorry, it was just to say thanks. I think there's some gremlins in Conferral this afternoon, but yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donnelly, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's on the Equal Opportunities Monitoring Form, Elaine, the results that you got back in. I think it's to be commended that we've actually, that process, we've identified 12 who were black or ethnic minorities have come through. I know we did have a difficulty recruiting from the black and ethnic minorities, and that's why with the equity committee that gets set up to investigate applications and how we could better that. And obviously there's a result showing up there, which is really pleased to see. I'm pleased to see that we've actually got that sorted, and hopefully we'll see more coming through. The one bit that was disappointing is the veterans. 12 were interviewed and 5 were shortlisted for interview, and no one was appointed. Could we explore where we're falling down there? I mean, it could be they've just not got the skills that's been asked for, and that's fine. I can't do anything about that, but it might be worthwhile exploring that to see if there's any gaps or any problems there that we might be able to overcome going forward. Thanks, Elaine.
Yeah, Councillor Donnelly, I think it's been raised before in terms of some of the statistics, and you will be aware that obviously we can only report on the information that we are provided with. So not everybody will declare all of the details, but I'll certainly ask the team to go back and just have a look at those particular applications to see what they were, and again, just if there was any points of concern, just to make sure that the process was followed properly.
Can I ask a supplementary?
Certainly, yeah.
Does their figures show hidden disabilities in anyone that's coming forward? No? For instance, I've got disabilities, but they're hidden disabilities. Okay. I don't think anybody in here would know.
So this is about what an individual will declare,
right.
In terms of the information they've provided. So if the person doesn't provide that, then we won't know that detail.
Right.
Okay, thanks very much, Elaine. I'll move the report.
I will second the report.
Thank you. Can we move on to Treasury management activity 24-25, the first quarter. That's pages 83 to 90. Back to you, Lorraine, please.
Thank you. This is the normal Treasury Management Report. Members will be used to the quarterly updates. And this covers the period 1st of April to 30th of June. So it's the first activity report for the current financial year. Section 4 provides a bit of detail there in terms of the Bank of England base rate and also the Treasury Management Advisor's prediction in terms of future cuts to that base rate moving towards the end of the financial year. Section 5 provides details of debt management and borrowing. Table 2 over the page shows the position for the borrowing for the year to the end of quarter 1. We haven't taken any borrowing so far, and we're using cash balances to fund capital spend. But as we've mentioned in the past, we will have to borrow to replace these balances as we move forward. Investment activity then is detailed in section 6, and this is about where we deposit our funds. Prior to depositing funds, we make sure that institutions are considered safe and secure, and we also make sure we can access the funds when necessary and that they're working well for the council. So as I've mentioned, part of the deposit methodology includes consideration of credit ratings and ratings watches, and as well as working with the financial advisors in terms of any information that's out in the marketplace. So table 3 shows where we've deposited money so far this year. That's similar to previous reports, and as usual we deposit most of our funds in the UK Government Deposit Facility and in other local authorities, with the balance in the Bank of Scotland call account that we hold. Section 7 continues the theme of managing risk and notes that the annual investment strategy back in February 2024 detailed how risk is managed and what investments are permitted. So tables 3 to 5 then provide details of deposits and credit ratings to the end of June, and as usual we use counterparties of a very high credit quality. Section 8 details the plans for the next quarter, and this will be more of the same in terms of the approach we take. So deposits will continue to be placed with institutions where their ratings are consistent with the Council's approved criteria. I have to put my teeth back in. And deposits will also continue to be placed with the DMO and UK local authorities. Section 9 covers the prudential indicators, and we're required to report on these indicators on a routine basis, and I would note there that they are in line with the limits that we have set. So I'll be looking to refer members back to the recommendations in section 2 and ask that the contents of the report be noted. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Any comments or questions? I don't see any. I'll move the report.
I will second the report.
Thank you. Moving on to item 12, Finance and Corporate Resources, Quarter 4 Progress Report, please, for 23-24, pages 91 to 106. Tom, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, as you say, this is your regular biannual update on progress that's been made against the resource plan. In this case, it's a Quarter 4 report, so it covers the year ending 31st of March 2024. A lot of interesting stuff in this report is in the appendices, and there's 3 of those. And the first of those is a reminder of the outcomes that have been adopted by the resource to help us pursue the aims of the council plan. Appendix 2 is the meatiest of the appendices, and it provides details of progress made against all 32 performance measures in the resource plan. These are summarised as usual for you in the table at 5.2. That's on page 92 of your papers. And you'll see there that of the 32 measures, 6 are showing at blue, that's complete, 20 at green, 6 at amber, and there were 0 reds. The rest of section 5 provides details of key achievements within the resource across the period, across the council plan outcomes, and at 5.3.2, the usual additional section on delivering the plan and achieving best value achievements within that. On page 94 of your papers, 5.4 confirms what I said before. There are no reds, pleased to say, I reported at that stage. And 5.5 points to that third apprentice, where details are provided of measures which change status between quarter 2 and quarter 4. And in there you'll see 4 measures showed a decline in performance. So I'll take you back to section 2, the recommendations, and those are to note the contents of the report and progress made, the achievements made, that there are no areas for improvement, i.e. reds, and the contents of Appendix 3. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Councillor Miller, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just a comment, really. I think it's a great report, great progress. Even the ambers are quite unfair because it's been missed by a smidgen. So no, a great pat in the back to Finance and Corporate for doing such great progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hose.
Thank you. I just want a wee bit of feedback with regard to what the methodology is when you set a target figure. I'll use page 100 as an example. Customer experience, high quality and improving council services. So for customer service centre, average queue time in seconds. Last year, we achieved 134 seconds on average, and we set the target this year of 300 seconds. And of course, that's going to return a green. So why is there such a massive jump from what we achieved actually last year and what our target is this year? And that happens throughout, not to that extent though.
Tom, please.
It's a pretty rigorous exercise we undertake every year and through the year as well. In terms of working, there's a group of officers called the CIAB, and they look at the performance measures and they look for changes. We ask each service area to look in very great detail at their own performance measures and come back to us with the targets that they believe are achievable. Now, you'd always hope those would be an improvement year on year. Sometimes for factors out with controls such as finance, etc., they cannot always be improved upon. Sometimes we're looking at stasis. Sometimes even we'll have to accept the targets will have to be slightly lower than they were previously. When we do that, we always give a narrative to explain that alongside the reports that come to elected members. Are you looking for feedback on that one measure in particular?
Well, that's the outlier standout. It's very, I mean, I find it hard to justify that it took 134 seconds to answer calls last year and we set a target of 300 seconds for the current year. It doesn't compute with me. And it's always going to return a green. Where in reality, that should probably be red. So.
Tom, please.
Okay, pass to Craig to answer that one in particular, Chair.
Thanks for your point there, Councillor. Certainly, but we did move the target intentionally from one year to next to the 300 seconds. The target prior to that was essentially 120. So, as Tom referred to there, we do review our targets on a regular basis. There has been some movement in respect of that one. We still think the target as it stands represents, when achieved, a good level of service to those that call into the Council's call centres. And obviously, when we're measuring waiting times in seconds, I think that in itself is reflective of the general low waiting times that the customers typically experience across our call centres. Thanks.
Councillor Hose, are you satisfied with that answer?
I just find it hard to why you're more than doubling what was achieved last year as a target. I don't think that's an acceptable way to go forward. Sorry.
Craig, have you anything else you want to come back on?
Yeah, I mean, I think really in looking at this, we take a kind of a rounded position in looking at the range of customer contact methods available to residents. Of course, as you'll be aware, we do try to improve those digital contact methods available to customers. So it gives them that full range of contact methods, both in office hours and also without. And obviously, we look as well at the efficiencies we can generate in delivering customer services. So it's getting that balance between the resources we have available to deliver a service and also making sure that we've got a performance standard there that can stand up to scrutiny. And as one, as I mentioned earlier, also represents a target that indicates providing good customer services and a reasonable response time for those that are waiting in the queues.
Just one final comment, not a question. That, for example, is under the customer's experience, high quality and improving council services. It's more than doubled what the waiting time is, so that should not be in a table of high quality and improving council services. Just for a comment. Thank you.
I think we've had a satisfactory answer. And can I just reiterate what Councillor Ferguson Miller said? This is an excellent report. It really is. It's absolutely tremendous. And, you know, everybody should be applauded for the work that has gone into this. So please take your thanks back. Thanks. On that, I'll move the report.
I will second the report.
Thank you. Revenue collection and approval for write-offs, page 107 to 112. Craig, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report advises committee of the collection performance to the end of June, and also an update in relation to the non-domestic rates incentivisation scheme, and then finally seeks committee's approval for write-offs. Section 4 confirms the current collection performance, with council tax non-domestic rates both currently ahead of target, the position for sundry debt currently equal to target. Section 5 confirms the arrears collection performance, council tax ahead of target, as is non-domestic rates, with sundry debt behind target by 1.5%. Section 6 covers non-domestic rates incentivisation scheme, previously known as the business rates incentivisation scheme. 6.4, we confirm the buoyancy to the first quarter to the end of June being 0.42%. So the tax base within the area should achieve growth of more than 0.48% during the remaining 3 quarters of the year to secure additional income under the scheme from Scottish Government. Section 7 confirms proposals for write-off for committee's consideration, covering council tax, non-domestic rates and also former tenant arrears. We refer committee back to Section 2 of the report. The performance in respect of revenue collection be noted, the current position in respect of the incentivisation scheme be noted, and the rest listed bullet point 3 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions? No, I don't see any. And can I apologise for those online who can only see the top of my head because of the way the positioning of this equipment is. We'll make sure that that's not the case the next time. And I'll move the report.
I will second the report.
Thank you. Money Matters Advice, Annual Report 23-24, which is pages 113 to 134. Back to you, please, Craig.
Thank you again, Chair. This provides committee with the Money Advice Annual Report for 23-24. Section 3 provides the background. I'll just cover in some detail, given this is the first time this report has been presented for committee's consideration. So the Advice Service is currently being assessed for accreditation under the Scottish National Standards for Advice Providers, operated by the Scottish Legal Aid Board. So it's a quality assurance scheme run by Scottish Government, and it's for advice agencies that provide money, housing and also welfare rights advice. There are 2 key elements of the assessment process, the first being the review of casework, determining if the quality of advice is an appropriate standard, and the second part is a view of those policies and procedures to ensure the service has been appropriately managed. Importantly, accreditation provides assurance to clients and other stakeholders of the quality of the service and also the advice that is provided. Standard 2.5 requires all services to regularly undertake a review of their work against their aims and objectives, and also make these results available in a publicly accessible format at least once a year. So an annual report is therefore considered the most appropriate way in which to do this. Section 4 of the report provides an overview, advising that there are 11 chapters in total, providing an overview of the role of the advice service itself for South Lanarkshire and also the residents. Provides a summary of the key statistics showing demand on money advice in the financial year and the performance of the service by individual functional teams. The annual report is provided in Appendix 1 to the report. Moving on to Section 5, in terms of key highlights, the Money Matters Advice Service has been at the forefront of tackling poverty across South Lanarkshire by maximising the income of clients and also assisting with problem debt. This has particularly been the case since 2020, with the impact of COVID-19 on households and also the cost of living. The Money Matters Advice Service assisted just under 13,000 unique clients in the financial year, dealing with just under 39,000 issues. Also generated £24.2 million in financial gain for those clients. The Community Wellbeing Team provide a frontline triage service for Money Matters and provide most of the emergency support, receiving 21,000 calls during the year. They made just under 6,500 referrals for emergency energy vouchers, nearly 2,000 food bank referrals, and distributed £2,250 cash first vouchers to clients. The advice team in the same period opened just under 3,000 cases, dealt with over 20,000 problem debts, totalling £12.6 million, with 1.8 of that debt then written off. The Welfare Rights Team received over 10,000 referrals for benefit checks and generated 22.4 million financial gain. The service itself also operates several projects with partner agencies, help fund bespoke services to different client groups, including Macmillan Cancer Support and the NHS Scotland Cost of Living Project. Out of a maximum of 5, the service received a rating of 4.58 from those clients who responded to the monthly customer satisfaction survey. 94.4% also said they'd recommend the service to their family or friends. And at 5.9, confirms the report provides a range of information on client demographics. Chapter 10 provides a breakdown of clients by electoral ward. And then moving on to section 6 of the report, it is the intention for the annual report to be published on the Council's website, then provided to the Scottish Legal Aid Board following publication as part of the overall assessment process to achieve accreditation. Feedback from that assessment process will then inform future content of the annual report. I'll also reflect continuous improvement in the service as demonstrated this year with the introduction of new performance measures for 24-25. Refer committee back to the recommendations. The Members' Advice report for 23-24 is noted and the publication of the report on the Council's website is agreed. Thank you, Chair, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Craig. Councillor Gladys Miller, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. I have a comment and a question. I have always found the Money Matters service just an absolutely fabulous asset and often signpost constituents. I think the 3,000 advice requests that Craig was referring to probably came from me, all my referrals. And what I find is I get feedback from the constituents and they always mention how empathetic, how understanding and how helpful the officers were. So I just think it's wonderful. And now that the new service actually engages with the various partnerships, what I was wondering, in relation to that engagement, if a constituent or a client has a requirement from a specialist service that's provided by one of the partners, do the officers engage with the specialist service or do they signpost to the specialist service? I was just curious.
Craig, please.
Yeah, thank you for the point there. The service will typically signpost. I think very much respect individual roles and professions that exist out with the kind of core advice network within which Money Matters operate. So signposting typically would be the approach to be taken in that scenario.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donnelly, please.
Yeah, just to commend the report with my experience in the hubs in Lanarkshire, in Hamilton, Hill House and Burnbank. Money Matters come and visit and have been absolutely a lifeline to my constituents where they have sought advice and guidance in money matters and financial advice. So yeah, take my hat off to them. They're providing an amazing service and it's to be welcomed. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Donnelly. Yes, I would agree with that. Your case studies are also very interesting. And I have a meeting tomorrow with Money Matters, so I look forward to passing on our congratulations to them for all the hard work that they do. I'll move this report.
I'll second the report.
Thank you. Can we move on to Common Good Update Report, pages 135 to 140. Back to you, Lorraine, please.
Thank you. So this is the routine Common Good Update Report. As you say, the Chair starts on page 135. And if I can take you straight to section 4 of the report, which picks up on the annual accounts position for the end of last financial year across the Common Good funds. So table 1 there notes the amounts that are readily available to meet expenditure moving forward And just in section 4.3 there, we're noting some commitments, particularly against the Hamilton Common Good Fund in relation to the master plan development work. And we've also got additional potential commitments noted in the remainder of the report. So moving on then to section 5. That section details the planned maintenance budget. We have delegated budget of £15,000 to the Executive Director, and we're noting 2 projects there that have made requests for funding, and that's the toll booth roof water ingress and also a fence repair at Cleghorn Road. Section 6 of the paper goes on to look at Hamilton repairs and maintenance budget. There are no new commitments against that at the moment for 24-25, and we'll continue to work with Community and Enterprise Resources to identify any requirements in the current year. Section 7 then goes on to look at additional funding requests for the Lanark Common Good itself, so that's out with the repairs and maintenance side of things. So the first one there, starting in section 7.2, is the St Nicholas Church Tower. And this is really an update on where we were when we reported previously to committee back in May. We've now got costing information there on that project, and due to the level of it, it's proposed that we delay that project until such time as the church is in a position to take forward the joint project with the council. There are another 2 items there for approval, and that's the Lanark Loch car park repair of an estimated cost of £60,000 there, and also a gate required at the Drove Road path for £10,000, and both of those projects are proposed to be met from the Lanark Common Good Fund. Just to kind of round that off in terms of context, in section 7.11 there, we're noting that we had a cash balance of £276,000 at the end of last year. If we set aside the £15,000 for planned maintenance, we've still got £261,000 available to meet those total proposed costs in section 7 there. Section 8 then goes on to look at the common good status of Biggar Public Park and Golf Course. And members may be aware, a report was presented to Community and Enterprise Committee back in June, which noted that we would do some review work in relation to the titles for the public park and golf course in Biggar. That review is now concluded, and the majority of the title to Biggar Public Park and Golf Course should be treated as inalienable common good. And what that means is we have to apply the common good law to the area in terms of whether the council is considering any disposal of land or any change in use. We also may need to petition either the Sheriff Court or the Court of Session before any land could be disposed of, or if the use of land has changed. So there is a further paper coming to committee, the next paper, in terms of a framework for the use and management of common good assets. But the proposal here is that the General Fund will continue to be responsible for all costs associated with the operation of the building, and that revenue and capital costs will continue to be the responsibility of the General Fund, and that any income from the operational use of the assets arising from either service delivery or subletting would be to the benefit of the General Fund, and that's recognising the investment in the asset and the costs incurred in operating the assets. If I can refer committee back to the recommendations in section 2, that the accounts for the common good are noted in section 4, that the cyclical spend committed against the common good repairs and maintenance budgets for both Lanark and Hamilton are noted, that the projects that would require funding from the common good, from the Lanark Common Good specifically, that can't be met from repairs and maintenance and that are noted in section 7 are recommended for approval, and that the outcome of the title review to Biggar Public Park and Golf Course be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Do we have any comments or questions? Alec Allison, please.
Comment mainly. Pleased to see that the golf course and public park have now been acknowledged as common good. Although it was, I think, earlier in the year, you suggested there was a paper at Community and Enterprise. It is a subject that has been raised continually for a number of years, and so I'm pleased that whoever has been able to move that on in the last few months has done so. It does raise a number of other questions, but I think we'll leave them till we come into the next paper on the framework as to how that will operate now.
Okay, thank you. Time is now upon us. We're required to have a 5-minute break. Can I agree this report, please?
Agreed, I'll second the report.
Thank you. And if we can have 5 minutes, please, for the for Bruce. Thank you. Good afternoon and thanks again for your patience. Can I move on to agenda item 16, excuse me, which is the framework for the use and management of common good assets, as page 141 to 148. Back to you, please, Lorraine. Thank you.
Thank you. So agenda item 16, as the Chair said, picks up on the framework for the use and management of common good assets. So the background to the common good is set out in section 3, and it also provides detail of a court ruling in a case against Angus Council that identified that assets which have been built by the general fund of a local authority are part of the applicable common good fund and have been since being built. So in recognition of that decision, this paper provides a framework to provide clear, or proposes a framework, sorry, to provide clear management arrangements between the general fund and the common good funds of the council, and particularly with respect to the use of buildings. So in establishing a framework, section 4.1 details some key principles, which includes following proper accounting practice for both the common good fund and the general fund. The fact that the council had best value obligations to both common good fund and general fund, so it's essential that any framework and approach is fair and balanced to both funds and their stakeholders. And also that the framework is not intended to be inflexible, so it's a basis that we can work from, and we'll consider future issues and scenarios because there are a number across the council, and that we will look to be as flexible as we can be, and if that's the case we would come back to committee for approval if there were any changes to what we're currently working from. Section 5 then looks at 3 scenarios in terms of interaction between the general fund and the common good funds in relation to the assets and the buildings in particular. The first is noted in section 5.2 and they're taken in turn. So the first one covers instances where the general fund makes use of a common good asset and continues to pick up the costs. The more common scenario where a new building is created by the general fund on common good land, or a building created by the general fund has been reassessed as a common good asset. And finally, and probably less likely, where a common good asset is reassessed as being a general fund asset. The intention of the framework is to be fair to both parties and, in essence, to maintain the status quo while giving cognizance to the rules that we have to follow, as I mentioned, in terms of the key principles, so best value, accounting rules, etc. So you'll see that that's summarised in section 517. The outcome of the proposed framework is that moving forward, there's no significant change in the respective financial positions for either the common good fund or the general fund, except we would be looking to transfer the current net book value of any assets from the general fund to the common good balance sheet for any assets that we now think should be recognised as belonging to the common good fund. And thereafter, any additional depreciation charges would impact on the common good. However, they have a nil effect on the bottom line cash balance. That's an accounting entry only. And the other exception is the potential financial liability for the common good fund from ownership of the asset following the end of the transfer period. And that's really where we're saying that we would take a year beyond a situation where the general fund would potentially no longer want to use an asset that's on the common good land and then deemed common good. We would take the time to reflect on the best approach to deal with that, and we would come back to committee to take a decision on that at that point in time. The common good assets that we would highlight are detailed from section 5.19 onwards, and those include now the bigger public park and golf course, Holy Cross High School down in Bothwell Road, and Hamilton Palace Sports Ground built down on the Palace grounds at the bottom of Hamilton. For each of these, the running cost of these assets is currently met by the general fund, and under the proposed framework, that would continue to be the case. So what I'm looking to ask committee to approve this afternoon is in section 2, in terms of the recommendations, that the framework for the use and management of the assets as detailed in the 3 scenarios presented in section 5 are approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lorraine. Councillor Donnelly, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was under Hamilton Common Good Assets, Lorraine. I'm just wondering, where are we? It was the bingo hall, the former bingo hall, 11 Key Street. Was that looking at housing, and has that come back under us? That's point 1. And also the second point is the where is it? Union Street. Did I get it? Yeah, in Union Street, the Castle Glen, there's a wall there that's been reported that's it's just crumbling. Has that been picked up to get repaired? Because it's actually a health and safety hazard.
Thanks, Lorraine.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your questions, Councillor. In relation to the Cadzow Glen, I've not been made aware of that, so I'll pick that up with our grounds maintenance colleagues and see if it's
Councillor Collinger reported that.
to grounds maintenance. I'll follow up on that and see if I can find
Yeah, it was
an
reported.
explanation of that. And in relation to the former bingo hall, I do recall that that was, and Jackie can keep me right if I'm going off piece, but I do recall that that was being looked at for social housing for Clyde Valley. But I think that fell through, if my memory serves me right, and I haven't had an update on that in the last few months.
Right, so if that was sold to a housing authority, that money would come to the common good, would it?
We'd be looking to maintain the status quo in terms of that situation, so that's probably a no.
Right.
Councillor Donnelly, can I let Jackie Taylor in on this, please?
Sorry, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the point. See that appendix? That is the current assets, and that's currently, that particular asset is in common good. There's no change proposed for that particular asset. The only assets that actually are changing because of that legal ruling are the ones Lorraine mentioned, those 3 that are in the reports. So see all those other assets that are in that appendix? Nothing's changing with them. They'll stay the same. That helps.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allison, please.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, can I just get some clarity? Is this framework result of our own work, Jackie, or is this on government guidelines and legislation?
Right, Jackie, thank you.
The need for this framework, or for us to report back, is to reflect the findings of that case in Angus, which effectively said, see if you've built an asset on common good land, so for example the school, as Lorraine mentioned, that has to be treated as common good. So there's a requirement for us to do this. This isn't, I suppose, a choice thing. We've got to reflect that asset in the correct place.
So just to be clear, the need for a framework is legislative, if you like, but the actual framework itself is what we have decided how we wish to run it.
Correct. So the framework is how we will deal with the fallout from the need to do this.
Okay. And specifically here, sorry, because it's mentioned specifically in here at 520 how bigger public park and golf course are going to be looked at. I'm a little bit concerned here because it's at the moment we do not know how it's going to be run. It is currently it's now in between consultations because of the change to the Common Good Fund. We do not know yet whether the Council, through the General Fund or any other means, are going to be contributing to any costs to do with that. Yet we're saying here that if any income has to go to the General Fund, and the General Fund may not have any contribution towards that. So why is it in there? Surely it should be going to the Common Good Fund if, as part of whatever agreement comes out of the discussions in the next year, the Council does not contribute.
In terms of what we're proposing here, the framework is intended to cover all assets. And what we're trying to do is maintain the status quo. So at the moment, if an asset, be it bigger common good, Holy Cross or Hamilton Palace Grounds, if the costs are being incurred by the general services pot of money, then that would continue. So we're not trying to put an extra burden onto the common good, because it would be crazy for us to think that the common good would be able to afford to run assets like the school. So the aim of this framework is to maintain the status quo. And bigger park and golf course were actually running at a loss. This was a cost to general services. Therefore, we wouldn't burden the common good with those costs. Lorraine mentioned this isn't intended to be inflexible. And you're absolutely correct, we don't know what the outcome of the work around Biggar Park will be. And I think we need to wait and see what the outcome of that is to then consider if this framework has to be adjusted for that particular scenario. If the new scenario, whatever that may be, for Biggar Park turns out to be the same as it was before in terms of costs, that would be a burden on the common good rather than income. So what we've tried to do is keep the status quo financially and not put any greater burden onto general services or to common good.
I can understand the approach, what you're trying to do, but this actually says, what does it say? Any income from operational use of assets arising from the service is to the benefit of the general fund. No conditioning, no saying whether they've contributed anything to it. Surely we need to say in there that how this will be accounted for in the future will depend on the involvement of the general fund or not.
I would say that the General Services has contributed to this asset in the years that has been operating in terms of ground maintenance costs and the costs that have been incurred in the same way that historically we've been paying for the school and for costs around other assets. So that's the reference to the General Services contribution in the past. What I can assure you of is when we have more clarity around the situation at Biggar Park, we will be able to consider if any movement away from this framework is appropriate. So we're not saying this is inflexible, and that's exactly why those words were put in there, because we don't know what the situation will be going forward. But what we do know is that General Services have been picking up the costs for that particular asset for a number of years.
Which was when it was in the council, so it is now part of the Common Good Fund, which changes everything. And I think that should be reflected in these words. But if we're happy that that you're giving us sufficient flexibility to come back and look at this once the current process is concluded, then fair enough.
Any other comments or questions? No, I'll agree. Can we agree the report, please?
Agreed. I'll second the report.
Thank you. I have no items of urgent business, and I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for your attendance here today, whether in person or online. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.